Guys, first round of Chiori information is finally here, and I have a few initial theory crafting thoughts to give you about it. A few days ago I made this tweet where I basically said that I had completely no idea of how Chiori could turn out to be because Hoyoverse has been very unpredictable with its Geo characters. And once again, they've surprised us. Chiori's kit is that of a sub DPS that deals most of her damage through her Elemental skill. In fact, by using her skill, she will deal some initial damage and then summon a puppet on field that will deal damage over time. Basically, an initial functioning that is resembling of characters like Albedo or Fischl. The interesting part about it, and the thing that has generated a collective thought of despair into the entire community when they read this, is that this skill gets better when she's played with the characters that can summon constructs. When there is a construct on field, this skill will summon an extra puppet that will deal damage independently. Basically, by using her with characters that can enable this, like Zhongli, Albedo, Geo main character, Itto, you can effectively double this part of her damage. The scary part is that this list of characters doesn't include Navia, but we'll get to this later. For now, let's focus on her damage. Based on what we know as of now, the puppets will last for 17 seconds in total on field, and they will deal damage every 3.5 seconds. This damage will scale off both attack and defense, split scaling. So we meet again, old friend. Before I move on, let me remind you that if you haven't subbed to my channel yet, but you enjoy my content, please consider doing so because it really helps me notice your support. Now, let's not jump to conclusions. Yes, she has split scaling, but this is not necessarily bad. Her main scaling stat is definitely defense because it's higher than the attack scaling, and also her base defense is much higher than her base attack, stats-wise. Question: why not just give her a full higher defensive scaling rather than splitting it between attack and defense? The actual answer to this is that you should see this as a way from miHoYo to make her more versatile. What is happening here is that her defensive scalings are pretty high, and she also gets attack scalings on top. The reason this is good is that this way she also gets to benefit from attack buffs like Bennett, the Noblesse set, the Tenacity set, Pyro Resonance, and so on. The relevance of her skill is further magnified by her first passive. This one has two different effects. The first one is that if you press the Elemental skill button after casting the puppet, you will be switching automatically to the next character on team, and you will be enabling new damaging effects from the puppet. Before I focus on the damage part, I want to focus on the switching part. The passive quite literally says that it allows her to switch automatically to the next character on team. This is pretty funny because it means that if you want to execute a specific rotation, you have to be careful about where you place Chiori on your team, so that after this passive is activated, she actually switches to the right character. The damage part of the passive is pretty nice because it gives all the characters on the team an effect where if they use a normal, charge or plunge attacks, they will activate a coordinated attack from the puppet. The way it's worded, one attack can be triggered every 2 seconds, and the effect will end after 2 procs. One part that is a bit unclear though is how the effect works, because it says it can be triggered 2 times, but it doesn't specify if the effect is counted independently for each character or it's shared between all characters on the team. Basically, we don't know if each character can trigger it 2 times or if the whole team can trigger it 2 times. Depending on what it is, this passive can range from pretty nice to quite insane, but I'm more leaning on the first because it just makes more sense to me wording wise. Overall, the damage she can deal with her Elemental skill alone is quite great, and to draw a comparison within the same element, it's pretty much superior to Albedo's across the board. It's worth mentioning that she also gets 20% geo damage bonus if a construct is summoned while she's on team, so it just adds to the total. Specifically, if she's used on teams that use constructs, her damage is massively superior to Albedo's. So for example, if both are played on mono geo teams, Chiori will just perform much better. On the flip side, on teams that don't have constructs, so a scenario where she just gets a single puppet summon, her damage is still somewhat superior to Albedo's, but not considerably so. In this scenario specifically, her actually benefiting from attack buffs is a positive, because for example, on Navia double pyro teams with Shelling and Bennett, she will be getting more buffs than Albedo does, so her damage will just benefit more. It's also worth mentioning that unlike Albedo's construct, her puppet can't be destroyed by attacks like boss attacks, so it's just going to be much more consistent, but But this is not all there is to Chiori. As I mentioned before, her passive also has a second effect. If instead of pressing the elemental skill button again to activate the extra effects of the puppet, she presses the normal attack button, she will be getting Geo Infusion for 5 seconds. As of now, we still don't know her normal attack scalings, so this is just an assumption, but I think it makes sense. Her normal attacks are very likely to be attack scaling, just like every other normal attack in the game. But the issue is that defense is definitely the stat you want to build on Chiori because it benefits the elemental skill the most. So this most likely means that you won't be able to magnify Chiori's normal attacks if you build her in the best way possible. A good comparison for this is Alhaitham. Alhaitham is a character that has a split scaling in his elemental skill, so attack and elemental mastery, but elemental mastery is definitely the main one. Alhaitham has attack scaling normal attacks, so technically it would have the same issue as Chiori, but the difference here is that Alhaitham's normal attacks can still proc spread reactions, so they still benefit from elemental mastery. So Chiori's case can't be quite the same unless her normal attacks scale directly from defense, which I find unlikely, or if you get her Constellation 6, which quite literally adds a defensive scaling to her normal charge and plunge attacks. Money is always the answer. Moving on, her Elemental Burst is a simple nuke that again scales off attack and defense. It's a nice chunk of damage, but I think it can realistically be a damage loss on most teams. Specifically, if you have to build energy recharge for her to use it every rotation, I think it's just very likely for it not to be worth the price. I think it's something you use every other rotation, even though its energy cost is not the highest. I think it's something you use every 2 rotations really. Builds wise, I haven't looked in depth yet, but I have some thoughts to give you. She is a sword user, so she has pretty good options, but while at a glance it might look like she can really benefit from Spindle, so the Albedo event weapon, since she is an elemental skill damage dealer and she has heavy defensive scalings, in reality that might not be the case. The reason is that Spindle's elemental skill buffs have a 1.5 seconds cooldown, which might be an issue for Chiori because she has damage coming from different sources of her elemental skill. 2 puppets, the coordinated attacks, there is a big chance a good chunk of her elemental skill hits won't end up getting buffed by Spindle, and this is not great. The Harbinger of Dawn, her other free-to-play weapon, looks much more consistent since its effects are just great for an off-field character that doesn't lose HP, but using this weapon will practically lock her out of Fiorina teams, and this is something to consider. Artifacts wise, she has 2 main options, the Husk set and the Golden Troop, that overall are pretty even. In terms of meta evaluation, I haven't finished any team-wide calculation yet, so I don't have a definitive answer, but from the looks of it, I will definitely expect her to be a strong increase for all the Mono Geo teams with Goro and Ito over Albedo, because she's just much better than him in those situations. In these teams, you can technically also replace Zhongli with her, but I'm just replacing the unit that has the same role for now. Regarding other uses, if you still use the double Geo core on teams with Zhongli and Albedo, she can definitely be better than him in those situations as well. For Navia, she can be a bit better than Albedo, although the fact she doesn't get the second puppet is definitely a big damage hit for her, but being better than Albedo puts her in the mix for best teams, which isn't totally bad, I guess. And for now, I'm done for today. Make sure to go check the video I made the other day about how the arrival of the Marachaussee set in the game changed how you can build your carries, and peace!